Hey everyone, welcome to the third installment of Paper Two Resources. We've been breaking down Sam Patch, and I hope that these things have proved to be effective when it comes to, helping you dig out what's really important in this, helping you, what one of my old professors used to call it, gutting a book. I hope that this is helping you gut this book. We have spent quite a bit of time talking about what industrialization is doing to the middle and the working class. What I'd like to do today is kind of flip the coin a little bit and talk about what individuals like Sam Patch mean to the established industrial order. In other words, what people like Sam Patch mean to the people that own the factories and the mills and other means of production. We've been talking in History 1301. We've also been talking about this guy from Tennessee by the name of Andrew Jackson. And if you recall, Jackson is really going to be maybe the military hero, but certainly a military hero in the War of 1812. That's really when he becomes a household name, and it kind of launches his political career. But the thing about Jackson, he never attended West Point. He absolutely never attended Harvard or anywhere for that matter. He was self taught. And if you think back about what we were talking about as we went through this unit in Jackson, on Jackson, I described him as a populist, a man, or in our day and age, a man or a woman of the people, someone that people like Sam Patch probably saw a lot of themselves in. And I told you at the time that he totally reinvented American politics because before 1820, at least 1828, but maybe even 1824, what politicians would do in American life is they would go in front of you and explain how much better they were than the average American, that they had gone to schools that were far, far superior to any of the schools that could be afforded by the common mass of Americans, that they had all kinds of money so that they didn't have to worry about where their next dollar was coming from, that they had, traveled abroad and they spoke three different languages, and that was the reason that you should vote for me. I mean, even by the standards of Thomas Jefferson, there's a good bit of deference when it comes to the way that he thought about people participating in the democratic process. Of course, people like Sam Patch should be voting if you ask Thomas Jefferson, but at the same time, they should be voting for which rich, well educated, white landowning man that they wanted to represent them, option A or option B. Okay. That was not certainly not the case with Andrew Jackson. But as you're about to find out, Andrew Jackson's elections and the politics that he brought in the 1820s and the early 1830s meant very different things to different people. So, what we're going to be doing here today is kind of looking at this situation in Sam Patch from the vantage point of the moneyed elite class, the people that own the means of production. The first thing I want to do is introduce you to a guy by the name of Colonel William Leedy Stone. So to do that, I want you to open up to the third chapter. It's entitled Niagara, and it's on page 79. So open up to Niagara. It's on page 79. It's that very first paragraph. In 1929, the innkeepers at Niagara Falls announced an off season exhibition. They would explode huge rocks into the Niagara Gorge, they would decorate a sailing ship and send it over the falls, and they would ask Sam Patch to perform one of his leaps. They contacted Sam through friends in New York. Sam accepted the invitation and set out to become the first Niagara Falls daredevil. Okay, so you got to understand what's going on here. And frankly, what is going on here is that there's a brand new state of the art hotel that is opening up in Niagara Falls, present day Buffalo. Think there and you have a good idea as to where we're talking about. But to kind of bring attention and get everybody, all the who's who in the business community, get them there, they've got all these crazy stunts, including Sam Patch. And as you're about to find out, William Leedy Stone is a guy that's like, maybe this is not the best idea out there. Maybe we ought to rethink bringing Sam Patch in. So I want you to scroll down or open up to page 91. This is further in that chapter, Niagara. I want to dig a little bit deeper about who this Stone guy is, okay? Right there on page 91, right sort of in the middle, there's a paragraph that starts out, in these days, In these days, before the penny press, New York journalists wrote for a moneyed elite, an elite that knew Stone's Commercial Advertiser as a source of useful news, sound politics, and gentlemanly wit. When Sam Patch first won notoriety, Stone and his colleagues looked for ways to dismiss him. Now let's slow things down. Commercial Advertiser, I don't know about you, but that kind of reminds me of a newspaper like the Wall Street Journal, right? A magazine like Forbes. This is written by businessmen for businessmen. Of course, it's got, literature and it talks a bit about politics and everything, but always with an eye toward the market and always with an eye toward business. So it's written by businessmen and for businessmen, and what these businessmen of the Commercial Advertiser are beginning to do is they're trying to find ways to dismiss Sam Patch. You got to ask yourself why. Why is that? Flip over to page 91, or excuse me, 92. Flip to page 92 or scroll down. I'm very near the top. As a matter of fact, only 3 lines down from the top, a paragraph that starts out Stone soon found better uses. Stone soon found better uses for Sam Patch. He had already learned to identify Patch with the followers of Andrew Jackson, who were upending the Founders Republic and replacing it with a noisy plebeian mass democracy. On his journey to Niagara, Stone recounts his discomfort on a canal boat with passengers who were very good for universal suffrage folks, all Jackson men, as the color of their shirt collars abundantly attested. He ran into another boisterous gang of universal suffrage Jackson men headed for the show at Niagara Falls. At the end of that day, he crossed to King George IV Canada and seemed to breathe a purer air. I am decidedly a Republican in principle as any man, but I'm no Jacobin, no Democrat. I hate the mob. Think about what he's saying about the people that voted for Andrew Jackson. He kind of looks down his nose at them. You might even go so far as to say maybe they shouldn't be voting. I mean, I'm not saying I don't think that they should be voting. Saying that I think that Lady Stone is saying they probably should not be voting because they don't really know what they're voting for. Middle of 92, a year earlier, a year earlier, that the Patterson strike had broken out during Jackson's triumphant contest for the presidency in 1828. Stone, countering a Democratic journalist's story about the strike, branded it a Jackson Riot. The rioters wore hickory sprigs in their hats as homage to their hero, Old Hickory. Worse, they threatened to throw supporters of President John Quincy Adams into Patch's chasm. We did not learn to what party Patch belongs, wrote Stone, but take it for granted he's a Jackson man. The the easy association of Sam Patch, Andrew Jackson, and anything that was low became a staple of Stone's journalistic repertoire. He is making a concerted effort to not only link Sam Patch with Andrew Jackson and Andrew Jackson with Sam Patch, but he's portraying these people as ignorant, uneducated, and potentially dangerous. Last paragraph on 92. Throughout 1828, that last paragraph there. Throughout 1828, the Commercial Advertiser argued against Jacksonian suspicions that President Adams had bought the votes cast for Henry Clay in the 1824 contest, in which Andrew Jackson had won the popular vote, but not a majority of the Electoral College. Clay had thrown his decisive support to Adams and then been appointed Secretary of State. Stone thought the rumors of a corrupt bargain between Clay and Adams were political humbug. Immediately after Sam Patch's leap at Hoboken, he constructed a regular built Jackson article documenting the bargain between Henry Clay and Sam Patch, a parody of the missing, misconstrued, and forged evidence on which Stone claimed Democrats based their accusations. The fictional Sam Patch of the piece is illiterate and gullible, and his language is the mangled opposite of genteel. In other words, this is not a guy that we really want to associate with, and it's certainly not what the framers of the Constitution or the founders of the Republic had in mind when it comes to choosing the future course of action for our country. Now, I'm still there on 93. I want to read the last few sentences of that paragraph. The article was a feast of parodied, right? You see where I am? The article was a feast of parodied ignorance and bad taste served up for the Adams supporters who read the Commercial Advertiser. The insane gentleman of Stone's first patch article was transformed into a low and ignorant fool. Now, I don't know about you, but I think what they're trying to get at there, what the Commercial Advertiser is trying to get at there, is that Jackson and his supporters, Sam Patch, and the people that associate with him, they're a threat to American democracy. And so while people of the Sam Patch variety, I don't think that there's much question. I think that Stone got this right. Sam Patch probably voted for for Andrew Jackson probably 3 times over. But people like William Leedy Stone didn't think that that was necessarily a good thing, that there was something to be said for expertise. And simply because something was popular didn't really make it right. We're going to talk about this when we get to the 1840s and we talk about American foreign policy. You know, going to war with Mexico to grab land, it was popular. As a matter of fact, Andrew Jackson was a big fan of this, but that didn't necessarily make it right. And so, in any case, continue to ask yourself, who do you think that Sam Patch voted for in these elections that we've been talking about in this class? I think it's pretty clear where he is, but understand that there's another side to this equation, and there are people like Colonel William Leedy Stone that saw Jacksonian democracy as a major threat to the longevity of these United States.